In the last few days, I was dismayed to hear of the death of Sergeant First Class Antonio Rodriguez of Las Cruces. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez died of injuries sustained when an individual in the Afghan National Security Force in an ANSF uniform opened fire on both U.S. and Afghan forces in Nangarhar province. That incident is still under investigation, but Sergeant First Class Rodriguez's death brings our continued presence in Afghanistan, the longest military operation in our country's history, into pretty sharp relief. And I hope as we have this conversation today that all of us, frankly, will keep his family in New Mexico, Texas, and North Carolina in our thoughts. These sorts of incidents are not new. We are all familiar with the extensive reporting in the Washington Post. Building an ANSF that can stand and fight the Taliban is, and frankly other military groups, is still a core pillar of the American and coalition strategy. I want to ask, how viable is that portion of the strategy, given 20 years of really halting progress within that organization? Why and how is that still a viable piece of this? And if it is a viable piece, what are we going to be doing different to ensure that this is a sustainable operation? And maybe we can start with General Field and go all the way across.
Thank you, sir. Progress on the conventional forces, the conventional part of the ANDSF, has not been great. You're absolutely right. Is it sort of our theory of change? Must it stay our theory of change? We have to have a vibrant security force in order to achieve our objectives. Yeah, that's probably right. We have made progress in certain capabilities. The ASSF, the Special Forces, has made a lot of progress. We do have good leaders at the top of these organizations now. They are reliable partners to General Miller. How much that is permeating down through the ranks is the issue. That's the problem. There's rampant corruption. There's just a lack of good leaders. Why can't we change that? I don't know. In part, and I could be wrong about this, I think we have asked them to fight in a way that isn't necessarily organic to them. We have made them reliant on our capabilities, the ones we use, not necessarily what they would use. So, but we can't start over. You know, that's the problem. We are where we are. So what do? I say we have to devolve more and more authority to them to do things their way, and support them and watch our money.
I would very much echo that. I think the larger Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police have been a frustration for a number of years. Very large organizations that have varied wildly in terms of efficacy on the ground. It's not that they're all broken or they're all perfect. It's a very uneven mix, region by region, unit by unit. But the success of the high-end forces in Afghanistan should not be forgotten. The Afghan commandos are terrific. Working with our Green Berets in country, they have been the striking force that has beaten back ISIS-K. They are the guys who get sent around as fire brigades to various crises across the country. The commandos are terrific, and they're proof that if you partner over a very long term with small numbers of U.S. forces, these guys are great. They want to fight. They're effective. This is true of the...
And that bright spot within the overall structure, is it sustainable over the course? Like,
yes.
It is sustainable. It's self-sustaining.
Yes. So to answer your narrow question, I think it's a perfect question, is, you know, how would we change this? We can't change where we started, but I think a smaller Afghan army, more heavily focused on these special capabilities, is probably the right answer in many instances. There have been, you know, observations at the command level. How do we do the hold mission better and more cheaply? And on the other hand, how do we focus more resources and attention on the things that are going well, which is Afghan Special Security Forces?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. The Afghan counterterrorism forces has had significant success. A couple things are driving that. Leadership selection and development, vetting the people who are in that force, very similar to what we do with our forces. So you have a higher quality in that force to begin with as a product to work with. And we've been operating now side by side for a number of years where we do our operations together. And when they're looking at our guys and seeing what they do, it's easier to copy exactly what they're doing. It's much better than any classroom instruction that you can possibly have. And we've seen that when we were able to operate with the conventional forces, and we had some numbers of U.S. forces there when we were conducting combat operations. The best success we had was when we operated together, and they could see it. But we're not going back to those numbers of forces. That's a fact.